Welcome to the Teachers Talkin' podcast, hosted by Dustin Tatro and Ghazali Abdul Wahab. In this podcast, we discuss all things education and teaching, from innovative teaching methods to challenges to strategies and much, much more. In this discussion or roundtable-based podcast, we bring in educators from all around the world to talk about a variety of education topics so that we can support as many teachers as possible. We want this to be a place of inspiration, personal and professional development, and simply a place where we can elevate education together. Welcome to Teachers Talkin'. Hey everybody, welcome back to Teachers Talkin'. As always, I'm Dustin here with my co-host Ghazali, and we are excited to dive into another great conversation today, and truly a topic that we have been trying to bring our audience for 3 seasons, reading. And so today we are joined by Katie Ludes, who's spent 25 years doing literacy work in multiple roles, teaching, coaching, supporting reading instruction and intervention across grade spans. So today's episode is everything reading. And our guiding question is, how does the science of reading and learning let me start that question over. How does the science of reading and learning impact instruction and outcomes across K through 12? So Katie, before we jump in, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and your journey in education? And when you look back across your roles, what have you learned about that actually moves the needle for kids becoming stronger readers?
So I have been teaching for 25 years, like you said. I started in actually Bloomington Normal for a semester as a Title I reading teacher just by chance. And that kind of kickstarted my journey to go into reading. Like I really started to love it, really started to get more intrigued by it. So then I taught in Joliet for a while, and then I came back home to Coal City, and I've been in Coal City ever since. But I've been in multiple roles in Coal City, and right now I'm currently an interventionist slash EL coordinator type position. So, but for reading, I think that in my journey, the most important thing that I realized is that there's been research for over 45 years. And somehow us as educators never get that research. Like it's taken this long for that research to reach us. And really it was through Emily Hanford's reporting in Sold a Story. Like that's really when people started to be like, oh, wait, there's all this research out there. But that research has been out there since the National Reading Panel. So it's just, I've learned a lot through that because I watched how, for some reason, the neuroscience has been out there, but for some reason, educators do not get it. Does that make sense?
Yep. Well, when you talk about the neuroscience and the science of reading, science of learning, what do you mean in practical terms? What are the big ideas that educators need to understand when they do reading skills or want to start a reading program?
The biggest thing is that the brain learns to read how the brain learns to read. No matter what, everybody's brain learns to read the exact same way. It may take more repetition. So say you have like some sort of disability, it just will take more repetition, but your brain still learns to read the way your brain learns to read. So the biggest thing is it starts at the phonemic awareness aspect, and you have to know your sounds. And if you don't know that's how your brain actually does it, is it's tying those sounds. And then the other big thing is understanding that yes, they've done the different strands and Scarborough's rope and everything like that, but they're still all interwoven. And what people don't seem to understand is that reading comprehension is the outcome. First place you have to look is, can they decode? Because if they can't decode, they cannot understand what they're reading at all. But then you have to start digging into the language. Once you get them to that decoding part, you have to dig into that language deeply because there's so many aspects of that language and understanding syntax and semantics and everything that goes into, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a
Vocabulary.
ton of things. How can you help young kids manage so much things that they need to know in order to read well? The vocabulary, the syntax, semantics, everything
Mhm.
that goes into effective reading. How can we cram so much into such a young mind?
I think that's where our biggest downfall is. We try to cram so much in, But really, if we build background knowledge and we talk about vocabulary and we provide explicit, systematic instruction, Anita Archer's my lady, that they just grow. Like it happens if you're providing that. So, and then eventually they can start like digging into the learning on their own, but they have to have that explicit instruction first. My biggest thing that I advocate the most is build that language from a young age. Like if you're a parent listening, start reading to them and talking to them about a story. And then as you're an educator in the younger grades, keep doing read alouds. It's so vital and it builds background knowledge of all sorts of concepts.
When you talk about phonemes and like sounds of letters and things like that, right away I think, well, that's what you do when you're young and in those early grade levels, right? But as a high school educator, I still see kids who truly struggle with reading comprehension. So how do you kind of bridge that? Like if you're a ninth grade teacher and you're recognizing that like some of your kids are struggling to read, where would you start?
That's hard. That's where I'm in my journey right now, really trying to help secondary and figure out because it's a different path. It's a little bit different. Their brain still learns to read the same way, but they definitely will probably most of the time they have those basic foundations. Most of the time anyone that's struggling have basic foundations. It's the morphemes. So it's being able to break the words into the different suffixes and prefixes and base and root words. And if you start kind of delving into that and maybe even getting like your science teachers helping with that and especially your science teachers, because that's where it's huge, and all your content areas, I think my journey right now is believing that I think it will benefit them. I think that's where we'll start to see growth with our secondary kids.
So with that being said, since we called this episode Everything Reading, tell us a little bit about how reading actually does connect to everything. You're kind of touching on it already, talking about how like science teachers can get into the fold and like helping, but how does reading connect to everything, whether that's, content learning or behavior or engagement or confidence or even equity?
Okay. This is a big one for me. So, especially with content area, if you're a secondary teacher, you are the master of your content. You are the best educator to teach a student how to read your content. You know it inside and out. You know how to read it. You know how to show them how to break down the content and how to dig into it. So, you are a strong advocate for them. When it comes to behavior, what we tend to see is a lot of kids that are struggling with reading, they have misbehaviors happening all the time. I mean, can you imagine going through school your whole career struggling with reading and then you just feel defeated, right? Because you're supposed to be able to do it and it shouldn't be this hard. And I think it's the understanding too that even secondary teachers need to understand is that reading, our brains are not wired to read. It's something we train our brains to do. And usually about 50% of kids struggle with reading in reality. So it's something we have to keep working towards. I know it is crazy. It's crazy to think that
Wow.
many. And now they're saying 1 in 5 are dyslexic. So they're saying 1 in 5 kids are dyslexic. So you look at your whole class, think about that. Think of how many kids have dyslexia in your class then. So the behaviors, that's where they're stemming from. And what I've watched is if you're explicitly teaching them and like guiding them towards it, the behaviors start to wean away because they feel success. So not always. I mean, you still have your outliers, but it does improve a ton.
Where would you say you see the biggest breakdown? When students move into grades where people kind of assume that that kids can already read. Mm.
Third grade. They think that in third grade, kids can read and they stop any of the morpheme instruction or any of the encoding instruction. So that's your spelling and things like that. Like they just hand them a packet and walk away. Well, kids still need that instruction. And that's where the biggest breakdown starts. Now, do we see it as we continue? Yes, 100%. So, but that's where the instruction, because even 6 through 12, you need to be teaching morphemes. Like they have to be taught those morphemes because they grow
And
year
that's
upon
interesting,
year.
like because what a snowball starting at third grade, right? Like I would not have thought that it was going back quite that far. But if you're talking about going all the way back to third grade, then no wonder by
It
the
is.
time they're getting to high school, like that's years and years of feeling defeated in reading and probably avoiding doing a lot of things or doing a lot of shortcuts to get through things that make it look like you can do things. And no wonder why we have such a huge reading gap. Wow.
Yes. It's third grade every time, no matter where I'm at, no matter what I see, all the research, third grade. For some reason, it's this mindset again, no teacher's fault, lack of us teaching teachers the neuroscience, that they still need to be taught how to read through those morphemes. They still need to be taught how to put text together and the semantics of the text and how a genre works, like, and understanding, explicitly teaching, like, hey, this is what a subheading is, this is what a title is. We assume too much that they know, if that makes sense.
So when you see these struggling readers, how much of it is there a correlation or causation due to the impact of like gaming or screen time, or is it taking away time from reading? Those other distractions.
That's like newer, obviously, right? So, yes, we're seeing some impact with that. It's a little bit weird though, because we're seeing some kids actually benefit from the gaming because the reading on the gaming is actually there. So it's like an interactive way to keep them engaged and not so not engaged in reading, because some kids just find reading boring. I get it. Like I always tell my students, I don't want you to love reading. What I want you to be able to do is read and read well. That's all I want for you so that you can be successful. And so but it does. And like, I'm sure you guys have seen there's some more reports going out about how technology is like messing with the brain
Yep.
chemistry and messing with the thing. I mean, it's evident in everything we do right now.
So then, how do we think of things like screening or diagnostics in a healthy way when it comes to monitoring the students' progress?
Am a big component of I don't want something that takes a long time. That's why I do believe in quick snapshots like universal screeners, and then you dig deeper through the universal screener. So it should be quick, 2 to 5 minutes tops. We should not be spending all those hours. I'm not going to name any of those assessments, but hours and hours on them, because that snapshot gives you a real quick way to like kind of sort out kids, look at them, and then be like, hey, we need to dig deeper on this group of kids and see what's going on. This group of kids, we need to accelerate. This group of kids need this kind of instruction. And it's real easy to start sorting them out and pinpointing this group of kids needs this group of kids needs this is what's got to happen. But it should be, like I said, 2 to 5 minutes. Like it should not be, because not every kid needs a diagnostic. Not every kid needs to go that long. It doesn't benefit anyone.
So when you sort them out, how do you build so much resources to match the many different groups that they are all in? I'm sure you have to build your resources from scratch, or do you have like a database of resources already available for you to use?
I'm lucky because I've been doing this for a long time in Coal City now. We've started to build some pretty good resources. So we have them there. But a lot of times it is starting from scratch. But I'm not going to lie. Right now, I'm starting to figure out how to use AI to help me in a good, positive way. A positive way. Like I got this group of kids. I'm struggling with figuring out how to do this. And it gives me a guideline. Now, do I use exactly what it says? No. But it gives me a guideline to start building and start building things. But especially in a classroom, it is hard. When you have all these kids with varying needs, that's where I'd like to see schools get to a point where we are doing much more cohesive. There are students, we're sharing all the students. We're doing walk to read type of model where they walk to a different room to get the specific instruction they need. And then, it would benefit everybody. It would benefit the teachers. It would benefit the kids. Less work on the teachers because then they're only focusing on this is what I have to focus on for this group of kids that I see at this time, instead of all the varying needs.
I was actually going to ask you if you could
And
expand on that a little bit, because I was curious when you say, even when you give a diagnostic and you see we've got these kids here and these kids here and these kids here, and you've got all these variety of reading techniques. How do you differentiate that in the classroom, to be able to meet those needs? You're a teacher, you've got 30 plus kids in front of you, but you have groups of, 6 or
Mm.
7 groups of different reading abilities. So like in your experience at this point, what have you seen work? What structures or systems have you seen put in place, like in the individual classrooms? And then you're starting to talk a little bit about how you're broadening that beyond a single classroom. But yeah, what's that look like structure wise?
Structure-wise for a single classroom, it is hard. Like, I'm not even gonna try to pretend that it's not. But the biggest thing that I've noticed or have come to understand is that we've always been under this assumption that small group is the best, right? But if you read any of the research, it's not. So it'd be scaffolding your whole group, finding ways to meet the needs of the kids through a scaffolded instruction. And I'm getting better at that and getting better at guiding that. But again, it's a journey. It's still, I'm not perfect at it in any aspect, but really the scaffolding is the best in that situation, because the last time that they're on their own, especially in those younger grades, the better it is, because otherwise they're not getting instruction. They're losing instructional minutes in reality. So scaffolding is the
How do
best way to
you
get
Earlier,
there.
you
manage?
mentioned about the yeah
Sorry, Ghazali, go ahead. Go ahead.
the yeah Dustin. I'm gonna ask this. So
No,
earlier you mentioned about the AI stuff. So can you elaborate a bit more on what tools you use and how you use them?
Let's see. Sometimes I use Brisk, but I haven't been overly excited about Brisk. For my EL students right now, I've been using Moat, and I love Moat because yes, because I can read a test question for them and then translate it into their home native language for them. And it's awesome. So then they're going and taking an assessment when I'm not around, and it's immediately translated for them and they can be successful, especially for our newcomers. When we get those newcomers in, it was so beneficial. I do use ChatGPT and Gemini, to be honest. It's like a mix of all. Like, what am I finding works? What am I finding doesn't work? ChatGPT has honestly been the best. I'm not gonna lie, it's really been the
are
best.
you using those programs to help you build like worksheets, graphic organizers, or lesson structure, or like a bit of everything? Like
Yeah.
what are you looking for?
Yeah, a bit of everything. I found Gemini the best for like helping with scaffolding different things, especially for my multilingual learners. They like it does a really good job of like, hey, I have a level proficiency 1 student. Can you help me reward this and lower the English language within it? So it is really helping me with that. And then the teachers are starting to see too, like, oh, I'm not changing the test. I'm just rewording it in a scaffolded way so that the student knows what the question is actually asking. And then I've used them for lessons too to help guide creating lessons and some worksheets. But you always have to check it because sometimes you're like, whoa, that is not what I was looking for, or that's completely spelled incorrectly and that is wrong. So it takes that human to be like, no, this isn't going to work, but it helps benefit. It takes a lot less
And then I
time.
was also curious, you talked about doing the scaffold within the classes and a more whole group. How do you rectify with like chronic absenteeism? Like how do you those types of kids, like how do you, get them back into the fold when you're doing more whole group scaffolded?
I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend like I do. I don't know. It's one of those ones that's still trying to figure out, and it's a hard one. It's completely hard.
Yeah, there's no easy answers to any of this. So that's why this is all work in progress, right? But talking about AI,
Yes.
kind of leads us into this next piece because I'm curious, as a K-12 EL coordinator and interventionist, how do you connect science of reading with those multilingual learners that helps to support both their word reading as well as their language comprehension? So you started to touch on that a little bit. If you could expand some.
So the science of reading is valid for EL students as well. They're going to learn to read English just like any other kid learn to read English. So we walk through the exact same steps. Now I have some kids that are 6th graders, 7th graders. My high school kids are pretty well, like they've been in the district long enough that it's not learning to read the English. It's more the vocabulary and having that vocabulary background and things like that. But for my ones that just kind of moved in, I start back at the basics. Like, here we go. Let's go back at the basics. It's really nice when a student does have a foundation in literacy in their native language. It transfers fast. It's so fast with those kids. If they don't have that background knowledge, it's going to take more repetition. It's going to take more everything I would do for a tier 3 English kid. Literally everything I would do for a tier 3
Well, then
English
what would
kid.
you say are like the common missteps like that teachers take? Like, is it confusing language acquisition with reading disability? Is it under supporting, vocabulary, oral skills? Like,
Yes.
where are those common missteps that people take and need to adjust?
I think the biggest thing is once the student gets the social language, they think that they're fine. And I'm like, no, there's a huge aspect between that social language and that academic language. Your social language is going to come into play in about a year to 2 years, depending on the student. And your academic language, it's like a 7-year process before they have that. So even if they can speak to you in English and respond to you in English, they're still lacking so much background knowledge that like even simple things like finding antonyms and synonyms, okay, that's really hard for them because they don't have the English language. The other thing that I think I struggle with is the understanding that truly a multilingual student has higher vocabulary than the majority of students because they have both languages. So they have vocab in both languages, so they actually have a broader amount of vocabulary than we do. I'm trying to start teaching about translanguaging so that I've been teaching my students this, but I'm trying to teach the teachers about it too, so that my students are starting to learn that, okay, I don't know what this English word is. That's a time I use Google Translation real quick to switch it. And then usually they're like, oh, I know what that means. And they have that word in their native language. They just didn't have it in English. And that's how we're not translating everything. We're just translating keywords when they're struggling with understanding what that keyword is.
So, what would you say teachers need to understand about language proficiency versus reading skills?
Language proficiency, sometimes they go hand in hand, kind of, except for sometimes the reading deficit is just a true reading deficit. Sometimes it's their language proficiency is not there yet. So they're struggling, not because they can't read, but because they don't have the language to be able to help them. So an example is I have a student right now, 6th grade. She's fluent, like brilliant, fluent in Spanish. Amazing. Her reading right now looks like she's at about a 3rd grade level in English, but she won't be, like, if that makes sense. Like, it's only because she doesn't have the English language right now. She is literate in Spanish, so I know she's going to be literate in English. It will cross over. It's just going to take time.
So moving slightly away from theory, I'm really interested because I've got a lot of students who don't like to read. So what does it take to build a
Yeah.
sustainable reading culture in a school setting?
I think everybody has to embrace it, and everybody has to be open to the fact that it's okay if a kid's reading a graphic novel. It's okay if they're reading a magazine. It doesn't matter as long as they're reading something that the kid finds value in. Like, that's where you build their reading. Is I have some students I tutor. I found some graphic novels in football and wrestling because that's their favorite things. They actually read them. They chose to read them because it was high interest. So it's embracing the fact that we can have graphic novels, we can have any type of text that gets them to read. And it's us as educators embracing it, saying, hey, I like to read. I listen to audiobooks. If they want to listen to audiobooks, let them listen to audiobooks. It's okay. It's okay. Guess what? You're building your language, you're building your comprehension through the audiobook. Some people don't like to read physically. It's still developing that background knowledge and helping them grow and think in a different way and also develop empathy because books always bring empathy.
I'm interested to know more about that. How do you link the audiobook, which is listening, to improving your reading skill?
There's some programs like Learning Ally that is awesome because it will audio and then it'll highlight the words so that they can actually have that reading going on too. But audiobooks help develop vocabulary because the more you read, the better your vocabulary becomes. So it helps there. It also helps them start to understand semantics of everything within the language and the syntax of language. It helps it grow because they're hearing it on a regular basis. And I know some of our kids come where the syntax isn't so great all the time. So the more they hear it, the better their syntax is going to be. And I'm starting to see crossover into writing even from the audiobook, from just the audiobook, because they start to understand how the
How do you
language
So by
works.
structure the
extension,
audio?
right? If
Hold on. How do you structure the audiobooks? Because, like, do you tell kids that they should be reading while they're listening? A lot of kids are going to jump to like just listening. Does it matter? I'm just curious.
I really don't think it matters because right then what we're trying to do is develop language, like, and build background knowledge and build comprehension. So I personally do not think it matters. You might have people who argue with me. That's fine. But I think it's more beneficial. Right now, I have a couple kids that I'm really pushing Learning Ally. They're telling me how much they love it and that they can see the words and hear the words, and it's helping them. And then when they don't have a second, they're still just listening, even if they're not focused 100%. Because sometimes it's fatigue of the eyes, too, if you think about it. Like when you're and your brain, when you're functioning all day to overcome something that's very difficult, we all become fatigued. Well, they become fatigued as well. So the audiobooks help that fatigue a little bit as well.
so by extension, this will help as well. Like listening to our podcast here, it's sort of like an audiobook.
It is. As an educator, I love listening to podcasts. I'm like, hey, I'm learning all this stuff just like walking and listening, and it it benefits, right? You can learn a lot of things through audio.
So, as you think about the work that you've done in your coaching, including reading first, what would you say are things that have worked? What hasn't worked, especially as you've been trying to shift, reading instruction at a large scale?
The biggest thing in the field of coaching is you have to build relationships with the teachers. They need to know that they can trust you, that you have got their back, that you're there to support, not criticize, not go back and be like a narc, for lack of a better word, and tell admin, like, here's what they're doing that's so wrong. They need to know that, hey, we're in this journey together. This is a journey that we're going through together. They need to see you fail. I mean, I've been in classrooms where I'm like, well, that failed. And we've both, the teacher and I, have cracked up laughing. And we're like, all right, back to the drawing board. So it's that mentality of we fail together, we succeed together. And you have to accept that there's going to be some rooms that are never going to let you in. And you just have to be like, okay, this one does not want me in there and will never let me in there. But usually then the team continues to talk about things that we've worked on and they pick up that through the team. My biggest mistake my first couple years coaching was like I thought I had to be with everyone and I had to find my way into those rooms and it would stress me out. And now I'm like, nah, if they'll get it eventually because they have enough teammates that are talking about it that eventually, even if I'm not in the room,
I
they're
was going
getting
to
it in
ask, how
another
did you
way.
build sort of like buy-in around this, right? Because this is a big thing, and science of reading has become a really hot term. It's become far more popularized now, and it seems like people are really starting to buy into it and like get on with it. But I know when it first started coming around, it was like another hot fashion for education, right? So how did you start to build that into the school where
Right.
you were getting that kind of buy-in and you were getting that camaraderie and that team building rather than it just being like, this is the newest fad and I'm going to do what I have to do because I'm complying with like what my admin's telling me or whatever? Like, how'd you find that balance and kind of like build that up in the school?
So I guess what we did was we kind of I just found someone who wanted to try it. Really is what it came down to. It was grassroots. Anybody interested? Here's what I've been doing, and from there it kind of grew. Even 2 years ago, I was doing these things called Learning with Ludus. They were after school. You could stay if you want. You didn't have to stay. And we started taking on the writing revolution and digging through the writing revolution and how we could impact that. And everybody's like, you're not going to get anyone to stay after school. I did. I got quite a few who wanted, because it's taken us that long to get into a journey where we started having conversations and collaborating, and the understanding that everything is a collaboration, I think, is how it really works, instead of being like a mandate. Like, you have to do it this way. It was more, hey, here's what the science says. Let's see what that looks like in reality. And then collaborating on how can we make that better? How can we improve kids? So it was just grassroots, and then them seeing success with the kids and being like, I can't walk away from the
Can you
success.
take us through sort of
So
an arc of either a teacher or a student, whichever, and sort of like where they were when you kind of started, and like what steps did you take, and like what kind of progression did you see over time in building this up? If you want to talk about like one teacher you worked with or a classroom that you worked with.
I would, yes. I And if she ever listens to this, because she will, because we're very close now, she just was defeated. She was 100% defeated. She's an amazing woman. She just was defeated. She wasn't making the progress she wanted to make. She wasn't moving kids the way she wanted to move. And she just looked at me and she said, "Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Yep, let's go." And I started introducing her to all sorts of different things. And now I would put any child in her classroom in a second. She had one of my students that moved in from Mexico. She got him right away when he moved into third grade. And she just took on everything, doing everything she'd already been doing with reading. She did it with him, and she did anything I talked to her about with him. And that student he's reaching proficiency, and it's only his second year because of everything that she did. And that kid, even all the time, because I work with him now on a regular basis, he always says, "Well, it's because of my teacher. It was because of this teacher. I hope my sister gets that teacher next year." She's an amazing teacher. So she's gone from defeated, "I can't do this, I don't know what to do," to feeling empowered. And that's all I wanted for teachers, is to feel empowered. Like, hey, and she still contacts me constantly. "Hey, what if I try this?" And I'm like, "Yep, I think that'll work. What if we tweak it and do this with it?" So it's amazing to watch someone grow like that and know that I helped empower her to feel so confident in what she's doing and not so defeated.
So if a teacher, no, I mean,
And
like,
it is really,
I think it's that's it feels like that's what it's going to be, right? Like these pockets where you start with somebody in that way and they find that success,
yes,
and somebody else sees it, is like, "Hey, what are they doing?" And then it just starts to build little by little until you have more people.
it
So
does.
if a teacher
Yeah.
wanted to start strengthening their reading outcomes, you know, this week, what's something you would tell somebody, like a one or two sort of small, high impact moves that somebody might be able to try this week if they wanted to start having more success with reading in their classroom? Where would you tell somebody to get going?
I would honestly say that the first thing that I would do is honestly conduct a oral reading fluency, even on secondary students, because you can very quickly start to be like, this kid's struggling with coding. This kid is fine, fluent, but I notice, because you have enough data already to be like, hey, I noticed there's some comprehension issues going on. And then from there, you can start to be like, hey, we need to do some more phonemes, morphemes, any of those types of things within our classroom. And then for everyone, I don't care what grade level, we need to be working on more of that oral language development through read alouds of some sort. Like, even if it's 10 minutes of a cool thing that catches their attention. I love when I hear high school teachers doing like a little snippet of something and then just setting it out and watching all the kids like navigate to it, because they only read like that part that like grabs your attention. And I've seen even social studies teachers do it, like, hey, this little bit. And all of a sudden you see all the kids kind of walk towards it. I'm like, that right there, those are simple, simple things to start improving everything.
So I feel like we could sit here and pick your brain about reading forever, but this has been a really great sort of introduction into reading and the science of reading and ways that teachers can start to improve reading. So we really appreciate you for coming on and joining us today. Is there anything we did not touch on? Any piece of advice that you would give teachers as we start to wrap this episode up?
Just you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay to admit that you didn't know. It's okay that you didn't know, and now you're going to improve your instruction. It's okay. Because I think we as teachers always feel like, well, I didn't know, and now I feel horrible, and like I'm a horrible teacher, and I've been a horrible teacher all these years. But that's not it. That's not the case. You are on a journey right now, then, to improve your instruction. And so it's okay to say, I didn't know, and I want to get better.
I think to build off of that, so many teachers out there, they're like, hey, I'm a math teacher, I'm a science teacher, I'm a history teacher. They don't think of themselves necessarily as a reading teacher. In my school, we use college and career readiness standards aligned to the ACT. And so like my English teachers really focus on the English standards for the ACT, which is honestly a lot of just like grammar. And it's my history teachers actually who use the reading standards. And so I've had some teachers this year who are veteran teachers who finally have come to the realization that, hey, I'm not just a history teacher, I'm actually a reading teacher. And I think even that shift in mindset, it makes a huge, huge difference, because when you start thinking about the fact that like your part of your job is not only to teach content, but also to teach kids how to read, we need people to get to that point before they're ever even going to begin to figure out, then what do I do to help those kids to read?
I agree.
So Katie, thanks so much for coming on and joining us and talking about this topic. Like I said, this is something we've really, really been wanting to get to. And so really excited to have been able to start touching on it. So thank you so much to our listeners. Thank you as always for tuning in. As always, if you are enjoying Teachers Talking, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with fellow educators. We drop new episodes every other Monday. And if you want to be a guest, you can fill out the interest form that's in our show notes. You don't need to be an expert in anything, just passionate about education and a teacher who wants to talk, because that's what we're doing here. So, Ghazali, thank you for being with me as always. And until next time, thanks for listening.
It's been awesome, as usual.
Yeah. Keep on teaching, everybody.